Hello, my name is Dr. Tisha Evans, and with me today,
Carson Raquel.
And we want to welcome you to
Be Well,
a show created by Your Therapy Now. So last time you heard us, we were focusing on communication, and we are going to continue that dialogue. Today, we're going to focus on
unhealthy and healthy ways of communicating.
Yes. So I bet you're wondering, okay, what are unhealthy ways of communicating? The first one is mind reading, right? So these are things that get in the way of you being able to actively listen to what the other person is saying so that you can respond in a healthy way. So it gets in the way of listening and also gets in the way of expressing yourself. So what is mind reading? All right. So for instance, Carson, give me a compliment.
Oh, you look so pretty today. I love this sweater.
Oh, gosh, thank you very much. So Carson just told me she loves my sweater, right? But in my mind, I said, she don't like my sweater. She over there just hating being fake. She don't like my sweater, right? So I'm thinking this whole dialogue in my head, and it is very different from what Carson says or has said. And so from that point, I began to create kind of like a movie. Oh, Carson, she's not really nice to me. She doesn't really like me. And so when I engage with her, I might come off as being harsh or doubting her friendship. And that can create conflict. Right? And so mind reading, you really want to be mindful of when you're doing it and trying not to engage in that as much because it doesn't allow you to really hear and receive what the other person has to say so that you can respond appropriately.
What is the root of mind reading? Because as I'm sitting and thinking about it, and to me, the examples that come to my mind could be maybe a root of insecurity. I'm sure there are different ones, but like even in my compliment, I said, "You look so pretty today." I've heard people be, well, what you mean today? Like, was I ugly yesterday? Like, will I not be cute tomorrow? You know, so I've experienced that happen before. And so for that example, I feel like that could be from a place of maybe insecurity, but like there's other ways you can mind read. So just what are some maybe roots we might need to look for to be able to rise above that?
So one, you nailed it, insecurity. The second is, in our culture, I think we can have a tendency to not be receptive to compliments. You know, compliments of rather our appearance or our abilities or our strengths, and that can be tied into self-worth. How do you really see yourself? When you feel like your self-worth is low, then sometimes it can be hard to receive compliments because you have a hard time believing those compliments because you don't really feel that your self-worth is one of value. And so it can definitely come from that. Also, too, you know, if you had been in abusive relationships, right? And you're not used to hearing compliments, you're not used to being deposited into, that whole mind reading can be a roadblock. And also too, Carson, in addition to that, trust. If someone has broken your trust or you don't trust that person, it can lead to mind reading. You said what you said, but I don't believe you because I don't trust you.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so part of communication, which we'll talk in the future, is really about how do you rebuild trust with someone who is worthy of your trust.
Well,
Just saying.
That's really good.
Okay. So the first one is my unhealthy behavior is derailing, right? So say for instance, if I have a conflict with you and I say, Carson, I really don't like that, when you put out the mugs today, you gave me the white mug. I really don't like that. Right? And then you come back at me and say, well, I really don't like that you put out the orange mug. What you got to say now? And so it's this idea of not staying on topic with the concern, right? And we're kind of giving a light and fluffy one. But for instance, if something more serious, like, okay, Carson, I really don't like that I wanted you to come to this special event that was really important to me and you weren't there. And that really hurt me, right?
Well, I don't like the way you're talking to me right now. So...
okay, well, what if, and then it kind of goes into the spiral, right? Then we start talking about why she doesn't like the way I'm talking rather than the real issue, which is you hurt me. And so when you derail, right? So in this scenario, Carson is the one with the unhealthy behavior because she is derailing the conversation. So when you derail, you never get to a resolution because you're just going back and forth, right? So one way to combat that is say, okay, well, I understand you don't like the way I'm speaking to you right now, and we can come back to that. But can we talk about this? The idea that I felt really hurt that you didn't come to this particular event, right? So that's one way that you can acknowledge your feelings, but then also stay on course. And you may have to do that 5 or 6 times in order to get what you need to get to have something resolved.
So we need to have conversational stamina. That's what you're saying.
Yes, conversational stamina.
That's good. We're going to coin that term. That's your therapy now. Thank you.
Yes, conversational stamina. I love it. So you have to do that. Also, to rewinding back just a little bit to mind reading, one healthy way to combat the mind reading is to clarify. Right? So for instance, being able to say, okay, I think I heard you correctly. Is that what I heard? That's a great way to clarify, to make sure you're staying on track and you're not mind reading. Okay, so we got mind reading, we have derail, and then is kitchen sink.
What is a kitchen sink?
Yes, the kitchen sink, by my terms, are when you have an issue with someone, rather it be your significant other, a coworker, or your child, or what have you, and you are throwing the whole kitchen at them, okay? And so you're listing all the things that they don't do right. You never listen to me, you don't talk to me right, every time I say X, Y, and Z, you don't respond, so I'm just throwing things at you. Now imagine, if you're on the receiving end of that, how would you take that if I'm throwing the kitchen at you?
I'd be very bothered. I'd probably shut down and I'm not listening to you anymore, and I'm about to ready to derail because you're throwing the kitchen sink at me.
So you would feel like I'm not trying to hear anything she has to tell me, right? And you gotta remember, the part of communication is, yes, I want to receive, but then also too, I want to make sure that you're hearing what I have to say, and you're going to be responsive and receptive to it. And no one's going to be receptive to it if you are tearing them down. In your mind, you might think, oh, I'm letting them have the whole list. But it's not going to work in most cases. So a healthy way of communicating is be able to say 1 to 2 things. Carson, I don't appreciate that you didn't come to that event, right? And then being able to see what you want for the future. Next time, if you're not able to come, just give me a call. That way I'm not expecting that you'll be there, right? So that's a way to just keep 1 to 2 things, and then ask that person, is that something you can do? Right? So you want follow through. You just don't want to be sharing your needs, but not being specific about what you're actually. Then that leads us to the unclear part, right? So unclear, which we all suffer from, this unhealthy communication, right? Somebody that hurt your feelings or did something that was wrong, and you're feeling hurt by it, or you're feeling upset, or you're feeling annoyed, or what have you. And you're thinking, okay, I have this need, I have this emotion, and they may ask you, hey, how are you feeling about that? And you say, oh, I'm just hurt, I don't know why. Or you're coming to them trying to express your needs, and you say, I'm frustrated. And they ask you, well, why? You say, I don't know. I just feel in a kind of way about it. I'm frustrated, and I just don't know what. They may ask you, okay, well, what can I do? I don't know. So like in that situation, is that easy for the person to kind of figure out, okay, what do I do next?
No. It kind of puts you in a position to where you're either going to choose, am I going to keep pushing this person to discuss with me, or am I just going to let it go and forget about it? And then that gives you the space for the person who's feeling the feelings to feel like now you don't really care. And then this also reminds me, the unclear communication, about a term that we use now is like, I'm feeling some kind of way, I don't know, whatever, and you never come back to explain it. I've seen so many people, well, that comment made me feel some kind of way. Well, what kind of way? And there's no explanation, there's no term ever given to it, and so then there's no resolution. Like, how can the person who has made me, or who's been a catalyst to make me feel this way, how can they change or address their own situation? Yes,
so you're touching upon some really key points, and the way to combat the unclarity is being able to say, let me come back to it. I I cannot emphasize enough, giving yourself permission to have time to think something out before you actually respond, right? And if you do know, being able to articulate in words, I'm feeling frustrated because of X, using I statements is really, really important. I feel this way. And being honest about what you may need for the future from that person. And if you don't know, letting them know, I don't know what I'm going to need, but I'm going to come back to this. Because like we shared in our last video, getting your needs met is important. Mm-hmm. It's an important part of communication. Then the last one is using threats. Right? Using threats. And we've all been guilty of it, which is if if you don't do what I want, then I'm not going to talk to you for the next 2 days. Or I'm going to be passive aggressive with you. Or I'm going to ignore you. Or I'm going to be harsh with whatever the threat might be. Or I'm going to leave. So being mindful of, not engaging in threatening behavior. Because what happens is if I say, well, Carson, if you don't come to my event next time, then, I don't know if we can be friends and I'm just going to be cool off talking to you for a whole week.
And you're blocked.
And you're blocked. You blocked on social media. You're blocked on the phone, right? And I never told her really why I was upset, right? So I'm using these threats. So Carson, in return, you might, in the short term, say, "Oh, okay, you may give into whatever I'm asking for," or you might apologize. Really don't know why you're apologizing, and that's just short term. It doesn't get to the root at the issue, which may be, "Hey, I was hurt. Let's look at our relationship," or what have you. Right? So doing threats, it does not work in the long term. So it's really important to combat that is saying, I'm hurt because of this reason. Obviously, if it continues, we'll have to take a look at our relationship. But can you be able to communicate with me better in the future? And getting their person's buy-in, saying, yes, I can, or no, I can't. Because threats, they don't work long term. Mm-hmm. So being clear with that.
And so with these unhealthy ways of communication, it comes from a space where you have low emotional intelligence. And just in the simplest way I can explain that is to say you don't have a working understanding of your emotions, how emotions work, and how to use those and express them in a healthy way. Because emotions are amazing. They're beautiful. Mm-hmm. We have them. We're supposed to have them. But if I have a low emotional intelligence, I am more likely to communicate in an unhealthy way. In my experience, even with Dr. Evans, I have had spaces of where I have a high EQ. EQ is the, short part. And there's been a situation where I was placed in a position where I was feeling and experiencing emotions that I had never felt and experienced before. And I did not know how to communicate in a healthy way. Her being her, the Dr. Evans that she is, she's been able to work with or listen to me or give me space to even be willing to come back even when I wasn't ready to say I would come back. Even holding space to say, well, maybe Carson didn't ask me if she could come back to me, but if she does, I'll be open to receive her. Because there's a part of the hearer who has to have emotional intelligence too. And so I've been unclear, and I've had to go back, and I have come back and said, Dr. Evans, I wasn't upset with you, or I said this, and I wasn't even talking to you. I was really talking to my situation or my emotion and not being able to clearly express that. And so moving forward, this is what I would need from you. And if you could help me, to remind me on what I just asked you to help me work on, that would be helpful for me too, because it's easy to fall back into those unhealthy habits.
Yes, Carson, you're really speaking truth there. And I appreciate you bringing in your personal experiences because, this stuff is real, right? Having challenges in communication is real. Dealing with other people who you love or like or work with and having to deal with their communication issues, this stuff is real. But all these things are not impossible, right? Mm-hmm. So being able to be mindful of your unhealthy behaviors, your unhealthy ways of communicating, to non-judgmentally say, hey, oh, wait a minute, I'm just doing some mind reading, gently correct yourself. It will go a long way for yourself and will also go a long way for the people that are in your life.
Absolutely.
Yes. So the question that we have for you is giving some thought to what deaf spots you struggle with when it comes to communication, right? Are there some unhealthy behaviors that you engage in as it relates to how you converse with others and how you can really invite yourself and challenge yourself to engage in more of the healthy ways that we spoke of today.
Yes, you can always come back, you can always do better, and you can always start today. Be well.